Good evening, East Lyme community, all of our parents and any students who might view this video. This is Jeff Newton, the superintendent. I'm here with Amy Drown, our assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction and assessment, and Kimberly Davis, our director of student services. We wanted to take some time to provide a deeper overview of the virtual Viking program that we've been talking about and the hybrid model, as well as special education services. And really provide a bit more of a comprehensive overview of those programs as it pertains to the start of the school year. Listen, we know that there's a lot of questions, there's confusion, there's anger, there's frustration that's out there. I want to apologize for that. We're building the planes as we're flying them here. Our goal and our number one priority is to provide rigorous and engaging instruction in any facet, to our students. We have concerns in doing that with just zooming kids into classrooms. Hence, we were really trying to build some more comprehensive programs, such as the Virtual Viking program, to support our students who are at home by choice or for medical reasons, given COVID. I think there's a misperception forming out there as well that virtual Viking students are kind of being left alone to their own devices. That's not the case. In fact, on the contrary, we're trying to ensure that we're providing a personalized learning experience for them, but still also connecting them to our East Lyme population. It's so very important. We don't want to just leave them out to dry on their own accord. So let's get into some of the components of the virtual Viking, as well as the hybrid model and special education services within both, so we can help to clarify some of those misperceptions. So if you take a look here, important program components. We're going to start with the virtual Viking program. Okay, so we are going to have and are planning to have an East Lyme administrator provide oversight and respond to student and family needs that are part of this program. So there'd be an individual, have a part-time individual designated, to meet the needs of this program. One of our only East Lyme folks or administrators. You've heard, regarding, and we've talked about, and we've been trying to keep some stringent boundaries on, movement between programs, because what we can't have is, students and families jumping between the two. But movement between the instructional programs, the hybrid versus the virtual to hybrid, will be discussed with families on an individual basis. If one is not working for a child at the start or during the program, we will work with the parents and the family to switch or to meet the needs, of the student in a different manner. Okay, so we want to clear up that misperception. Also, if we go fully remote, students can rejoin and will rejoin their identified East Lyme designated classroom right away. We will have that in the planning process and all this. We're not going to leave them out in a remote program through Ingenuity any longer than we have to if we go remote. So that's an important piece. Regarding sports and club participation, those students that are part of the hybrid model, they're in school. They're part of cohorts. They're with students during the day, obviously allowed to participate in sports and clubs that aren't virtual. If you're in the virtual Viking program, you're there for a reason. You're there for a medical reason, or you're there because there's a fear of sending your child to school. So if they're not in school, in a cohort model or with other kids during the day, and this is a regional decision, by the way, how do you allow them to be part of sports and programs on site after school where cohorting is gone at that point, because kids are now mixed together across a high school, for instance, on the football team or whatever it might be. So that's a concern. So that's why if you're in the virtual Viking model, you're not participating in those components for the safety of your children, because they're not coming to school during the day. Now, that's not true as it pertains to virtual clubs or virtual after-school programs that might be running. We want students participating in those. We want them part of those. So just an important component to realize the difference between those two. Also, two other components here, the ability to utilize our staff, East Lyme staff, to support student needs and peer relations. Mrs. Drown, our assistant superintendent, is going to talk in just a minute about case managers and having some case managers to support this program. East Lyme staff members, there'll be teachers, paraprofessionals, to support students in the Virtual Viking program. So there's a connection there, a case manager. The peer relations, and that leads me to the last bullet on here, the peer relations are essential. Maintaining an ongoing connection between peers, between hybrid and between virtual is important. Like I said, we're not leaving our Virtual Viking kids off in the distance to no longer communicate with our students in the hybrid mode. We are looking for ways and methods to bring those kids together during the day, during the afternoon, whatever it might be. We need to maintain those social connections between the students within the programs. So that's an important point that we wanted to clear up, as could be a misperception. Additionally, just some important program components, continued, why organize, this model or try and put this in place rather than simply zooming students into classrooms? Probably a much easier thing to do to just zoom students, into classrooms. I know other districts are doing it. There's also a lot of districts that are reaching out to us right now, interested in how we were planning to run our model. If we just zoom students into classrooms, I think you're going to quickly lose engagement with those students if in the Virtual Viking model. 5 days a week, having students in front of a computer screen is very concerning to me, both as a superintendent and as a parent. That's hence part of the reason why in the hybrid model, we didn't want students necessarily standing in front or sitting in front of a screen, for 5 days in a row. That concerns me greatly as a parent first and as a superintendent as well. There's also concerns, with student growth and achievement. I think, just simply zooming kids into classes, they might not hear instruction at times, their Wi-Fi might not work. There could be a number of issues that come forward where students are missing core instruction and might not say anything about that, which could cause a gap or a lapse in student growth, and achievement. This model is in place to prevent that and to help prevent that and provide more personalized learning at the student's individual level to support growth and actually accelerate it. And then the last bullet there, direct access and use of additional resources, through a platform. And the platform was Ingenuity that we were working with and utilizing. There's a ton of resources out there. We also have other platforms. There's the State Hub, which we could tap into as well. But Ingenuity's got a lot of good resources and solid resources that we want to use to support those individuals, Virtual Viking students at home. So just some important core components. And one other component in relation to engagement I just wanted to mention. I pulled a quote from Stanford University. Engagement strategies work because they're based on learning theories that stress student activity rather than passive learning. Active learning, collaborative learning, authentic and experiential learning, as well as several other theories that focus on getting the student to do something, be it cognitive or physical, work to engage them in their learning. These learning theories are why engagement works. That's hence my concern with sitting students in front of a computer screen for hours upon hours. Children are going to lose engagement. We have to make sure that they're engaged, and we need to actively involve them in their learning. Collaborative interactions with students, authentic and experiential learning, that different things that they can do and having different experiences. And there's where a platform-based model can support that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Drown to take a deeper dive into Virtual Viking and some more specifics on how the program's going to run. Mrs. Drown?
Thank you, Mr. Newton. So what's important to us is that we are making a promise to you, or we are making a promise to your students. Our promise is really threefold. Our first promise within the Virtual Viking model is a high quality, responsive teaching model. It is important for you to note in the Virtual Viking, each student will have their own specific courses aligned to their grade level and/or course that they are registered with. Within each course, there is a teacher to provide instruction as well as pre-recorded videos and lessons so that your child's learning can be paced to meet their needs. And then the third component for us is that teachers will be tailoring the instruction to make sure that we maintain the level of rigorous curriculum and expectations that we have for your student. In collaboration with the responsive teaching, though, we also know that we have to do our due diligence with accelerating the learning for your child. We truly want to honor where your child is, and we want to make sure that we are addressing through the model that we're offering that your child's needs are met twofold, okay? Within those, I want you to know that there will be a teacher for these courses, but in addition to that teacher, there will be a role of an East Line Public Schools staff member that will take on the role of a case manager. And really that case manager has two responsibilities: to connect that student to peers, as well as additional services they may need, and become a bridge to their school that they're connected to as an East Line Public School student. So it's very important to realize our virtual Vikings are East Line Public School students. They are just learning in a different instructional environment than their peers because of a personal situation which the parents or guardians are choosing are priority within their home, and then obviously having to meet the educational needs for their child. The last piece for us is that we also want you to be clear that some of the district-wide resources that your child or maybe you have been supporting with your child, whether it be over the summer or through the spring. Some of you may have heard of Lexia or Reading Plus as an example. Virtual Viking students will continue to have access to those tools, because one of the reasons why we use those tools district-wide is it provides individualized exposure to skills that are appropriate and aligned to the grade level curriculum that your child is experiencing. So we want to continue to use those tools and again provide consistency. So should the children in Virtual Viking transition over and or switch their instructional model, they are still well versed in the tools within their grade level as well as their classroom. The third piece of it is about individual student growth. And that's something that we want to talk to you about. And if Mr. Newton, you could switch to the next slide. Is within the individual student growth, we want to drive home three components that we want to make sure we're clear on. Throughout the course, students will experience pre-assessments, post-assessments, and several formative assessments throughout the course as a means of ensuring that your child is growing as part of the coursework. Also, that parents are going to be provided with a parent portal. So at any time, you as a parent can log in. You can see how your student is progressing on the course, how they did an assessment, how they're doing within their coursework. And then the third piece of it is we want you to know that on top of that, part of our case manager's responsibility will be to monitor those individual students' growth and work with the administrator to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable to meeting the individual needs of every student within the Virtual Viking model. And I think what's important too when we think about individual student growth, and I just want to say it consistently, that we really feel like within the individualized student growth, that it's just as imperative that our students with disabilities and our 504 plans continue to have their needs met as well. So I'm going to actually hand it over to Mrs. Davis, our Director of Student Services, and she will be speaking to you in regards to special education and Virtual Viking.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. So what does it mean for a special education student to be part of the Virtual Viking model? What we can ensure for you is that your student will remain on their school roster, and when a PPT is needed, they'll be supported by staff who know and are knowledgeable of the student and their grade level. So that'll be a familiar connection. IEPs will be implemented to the greatest extent possible in this model. It's a new model for us. It's evolving as we, each week as we plan and understand who's participating. And so while we can't tell you specifically what might look different in the implementation of your child's IEP, we will implement their IEP to the greatest extent possible. Please know that accommodations and modifications outlined in your child's IEP or 504 will be available in the virtual Viking environment. So that case manager is going to be aware of the child's IEP or 504 document and the appropriate accommodations that need to be in place to allow that student to be successful with the platform and the courses that they'll be enrolled in. And finally, if we move to full remote learning for all students, then students with IEPs or 504s in the virtual Viking model would be returned to their school's age and grade schedule for classes, and the IEP would go back to being fully implemented as written. This is because right now, the East Lyme is offering hybrid as our primary operating model. That is that school is open and this is our model of operation. And so we will implement IEPs and 504s in what is called a free and appropriate public education. And the model and vehicle to deliver that is the hybrid model right now. Should that change to remote, that will be our default mode of operation, and virtual Viking would no longer be a choice that families are making. So while we want you to please know that we respect your choices, we understand they're difficult ones to make, and there's just a difference with the models and the way the schools are open in these current situations. And as always, if you have further questions around individual student needs, your building principal is a great resource. I am a resource, or either of our two special education coordinators, Jen Van Dusen or Cheryl Felix, are resources for you. Should you want to talk specifically about your child's case, we'd be happy to do that. Mr. Newton?
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. We're going to turn our attention to the hybrid instructional model and pathway now, which we're referring, to the blended learning model. And Mrs. Drown's going to take us through a deeper dive of that hybrid model. So we're turning away from virtual Viking now, and we're talking about the hybrid instructional pathway. Mrs. Drown?
So you're going to notice some consistency in how I spoke about the virtual Viking and how I'm speaking about the hybrid model, because we want to continue to reiterate that three-pronged promise to you. So on this slide, what we tried to do is we tried to channel you as parents and figure out what is it that you really need to know around that hybrid model, and how are we being clear around our promise. So just like I spoke to you in the hybrid model around high quality responsive teaching and accelerated learning, I'm doing the same now within the hybrid model, but I'm doing it a little different in the sense that I'm talking to you about those on-site days and at-home days, as well as some just articulated aspects of those at-home days. So if I draw your attention to the slide on the left, you'll notice overarchingly, you'll notice 4 components to the level of quality instruction we expect to see within the hybrid model. There are 4 components to it. It is personalized individual instruction, small group explicit instruction, whole group instruction, and independent collaborative peer learning. We feel that the hybrid model that we have created allows the opportunity for all 4 of those components to come to life, which for us allows us and enables us to ensure a high quality instructional experience for your child. Now, the days in which we are doing some of those models is probably the hardest part for you as a parent to wrap your head around. So, but we wanted to bring home those at-home days and give you some more specifics on that. So if I could draw your attention to the right side of the slide. And at home, we want to be really clear that teachers are going to honor where students are academically and social emotionally. We want to honor where they are, and then we want to go ahead and we want to take them from where they are, and we want to accelerate them. So you may ask yourself, what does it mean to accelerate, or how do we accelerate? So we really want you to see sort of 3 different ways in which we'd like to bring that to fruition. One is really using students' individual learning plans for when they're at home. So basically what that would mean is on that second day that they're on site, they would be leaving our building with a learning plan for those 2 days which they are at home. And that learning plan will have time frames, task details, grading expectations for them. So it's not, maybe some of you may say similar to the spring where you felt that your child didn't have any expectations or any schedules daily. This will be daily expectations of those 2 days. The other piece we want you to know is that we will have paraprofessionals available to support students who are at home on their 2 days in order to meet their individual needs based on what's documented in their learning plan. So if a student is struggling within their small group instruction when they're in school, a teacher and student may agree, you know, it would be a good idea if that paraprofessional checked in with you on Thursday at 10 o'clock when you've decided you're going to work on your math work. Great, we can provide those opportunities for you. And then the third piece for us, I think, is that connection. And so, right, in order, students have to have a sense of belonging, and they have to feel as though there's a we within our community of learners. So the third piece for us and how we sort of accelerate and we keep moving and honoring where kids are social emotionally is we connect them every day. Right? So even on the days when students are at home, they are going to be required to log into Zoom so that they can be a whole class morning meeting at the elementary level, a whole class home base at the middle school level, or a whole class daily advisory period at the high school level. And we would obviously schedule that out within the time constraints within those building schedules. And then lastly, I want to again reiterate the individual student growth within the hybrid model. So it's imperative that our students receive as much individualized instruction as possible. One of the best opportunities that we are provided within the hybrid model, and this addresses my second bullet point on this slide, is we are actually able to minimize whole group instruction and really maximize small group individual instruction. That is key to us. We have all been in a meeting, in a class ourselves, one of 25 kids, one of 20 kids, and sometimes you may even have your own personal experience of getting lost within that group because you were one of 20 or one of 25. We have the opportunity within this to provide that whole group mini lesson on Wednesdays, but then those other days really hone in on individual skill set and individual skill development. And we really feel like that is the key and probably the highest quality of opportunity that we can provide to our students at this time. I will also hand it back over to Mrs. Davis, and again, she'll connect students with IEPs within the hybrid model as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Stroud. So what does it mean for special education in the hybrid model? Well, what that means is that all IEPs will be provided, all IEP services, will be provided while the district is operating in the hybrid model. Again, that is our primary operating model in terms of being open. So services may be in person or online due to scheduling, but they will be implemented as written in the IEP. Students may receive their services within their classroom or in the resource setting, depending on what's most appropriate for their need and their cohort. If they do receive their services in a resource setting, we do have additional protocols such as extra hand washing and separate materials to minimize that crossing cohort concern. Related service providers such as the speech pathologists, the occupational therapists, and school psychologists, as well as the social workers who provide those small group or sometimes individual sessions, will have plexiglass on tables in their offices so that when the need arises for a student to remove their mask, such as in an articulation lesson with a speech pathologist or an oral motor exercise with an occupational therapist, that can happen in a safe and controlled way. Our preschool students with disabilities and English learners may have, and our students with disabilities, K through 22 now, may have increased school days for individual education and learning plans. And that's an individual decision that schools and parents can make together. But there are certainly some students for whom we serve that have what can be considered high needs. That's a new term that the state has defined for us, and so we'll be talking with families about that and making sure we prioritize students' access and equity to their education. So again, I urge you, if you have individual student questions related to an IEP, to a 504, or to any special circumstance, you reach out to a building administrator or a student services administrator. We're happy to help answer your questions and support your decision-making process. Mr. Newton?
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Appreciate that very much, and Mrs. Drown as well. So that concludes the overview of both the virtual Viking, the hybrid model, as well as the special ed components that are mixed into that. We hope this was helpful to provide a deeper dive, more clarity around the programs. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are building these programs, the plane while we're flying it, basically. So we're doing our best. We're working with our staff, and we want it to be rigorous. We want it to be comprehensive, and we need it to be engaging, for your children. This afternoon at 4 o'clock, we sent out, again, the parent Q&A. We have received hundreds of questions, as I've stated. We are consolidating many questions are the same, so we've consolidated many of them, and we've responded and answered those. So there's additional questions and responses on the hybrid model, the virtual Viking model, as well as many other logistical questions and safety questions, PPE questions as well. So please take a look at that. There's also some additional state documentation that you could reference in there, some frequently asked questions from the State Department. There's a link there. So we're hoping this is all helpful. We'll continue to do our best, to answer and respond to your questions and provide as much support and as much information as possible. We appreciate your patience. We appreciate your support, and it's a partnership between our district and all of you as parents. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. Take care.